Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Sisters Corner podcast. And today I have with me a very, very special guest, Sister Shariffa. I'm so excited to have you join us for this very exciting podcast. The topics that we're going to speak about today is super, super fascinating because it's not something that, a lot of people are aware of, yet it is something that a lot of people are affected by.
Yes.
Subhanallah. And this is why we have to speak about it, right? But before we get into the meat of the conversation, I think for the viewers to know who you are, please give us a brief introduction of yourself and your experiences.
Well, I'm Shariffa, and I'm an American revert to Islam. I became Muslim many, many years ago, and it was essentially a situation where I had been recruited by a group of Americans who, while the recruiter, because my father was a commander in the American Army, and the man who recruited me was above my father in rank, and he basically, subhanallah, was with a group of other people that, not necessarily government, because he wasn't working for the government, he was working on his own with this group, but his position was in the army. There were people that were in education, there were people in business, there were people in different aspects of um, international travel, let's just say. And these people, their job, their goal was to take women, Muslims, away from practicing Islam. They wanted to make sure that, because it's so hard to take a person away from being a Muslim 100% into another religion or to even become atheists, they wanted to weaken the deen, and they were focusing with me on women and feminism. So that's the basics.
Subhanallah. And well, I think my first question for you would be why women? Why were they so focused on the woman?
Well, the few times that I asked them the questions, one of them, the answer was essentially that if you destroy a woman, you destroy every generation that comes after this woman. They realized that if you take a woman, get her out of the house, she's working, she's outside, and yes, in every culture, women that are working, everywhere you go in the world, you see they come home, they cook, they clean, they take care of the kids. It's still a primary responsibility. However, whoever is taking care of those kids while they're gone is leaving an influence on them, is leaving their mark on these children. So if they're not lucky enough to have a family member who's good, then those children are going to be affected for the rest of their lives because mom was busy being a woman, being trying to live as a woman in a man's world, as they say, trying to emulate and be like men and, have it all. And that myth that was created in the time of the strong feminist push and movement in the 80s. So that was one. The second thing was that, um, when you have women who are ignorant of the religion, when they don't have real good knowledge of what is Islam, why do I do what I do, not just because Allah said, because yes, as Muslims, we have to say because Allah said, but we're human beings. Allah said, Ikra. Allah said for us to reflect, to think about, his examples in the Quran. So he wants us to utilize our intellect. So if you have a woman and her life is going after that, that dollar, going after, the position, the power, the things that a feminist is set up to go looking for, to be basically emulating a man, being like a man, because the man is the goal. Whatever the man is, whatever the man has, whatever the man does, this is the superior way, and we have to try to be like them. Well, while we're doing that, We're not understanding our religion. We're not understanding a lot of things within society. We're being fed lies. And I'll give you an example after this. Remind me of that. But basically, we're being fed lies to make us ignore or lose what it is that we were created for.
Subhanallah. There's a point that you mentioned that I feel like flies over the heads of so many people. One of the things that feminism did, right? Because we speak a lot about feminism and the emasculation of men. But one of
Yes.
the things that and this is why feminism is so pernicious, because whilst it was emasculating men at the same time, it put man as God. It put man as the standard. And that's the real misogyny, you know? The real
Right.
misogyny is telling a woman that you as a woman is not enough, that you have to be like the man in order to have any sort of value in society. And the woman ends up hating herself. She ends up hating her womanhood, subhanAllah. That's what feminism really did. You know, it put man as the standard. And what happens when you put man as the standard in society? Um, Everything begins to revolve around that. And so when women spend their whole lives trying to be like men instead of, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in the Muslim society, Allah is the standard, you know?
Right.
So men and women are all equal. We're distinct in our capabilities, in our capacities, but we are all equal in our value. So what Western society did is it took away the value from womanhood, individualism, feminism, capitalism. All of these isms are interconnected because they all have a central goal. You know, we talk about why feminism and Islam is not compatible with each other, right? And there's a lot of things that we can say about that, because we can go into the biology of women and that, we're different from men. But really, what makes Islam and feminism non-compatible, and this is the same for every other ideology in the West, is the fact that the fundamental belief of liberalism is leaving the choice to man. When us as Muslims, the choice is not for man. We don't choose the way we live our life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses the way we live our life. That's why he gave us the Quran. He gave us the blueprint. Our responsibility as Muslims is to submit to that blueprint, to implement that blueprint in our life. So what happens now when we're telling women that, man is the standard, everything a man does is that's the value. Instead
Right.
of focusing her life believing in Allah, worshiping Allah, striving to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she centers her life around trying to be like the man, and that's one of
Yes.
the ways that feminism is really very, very destructive, subhanAllah. But now I want to ask you a question. Um,
Yes.
how were they able to spread this propaganda to Muslim women who, let's say, did they target particularly ignorant Muslim women, or do they also come for the stronger Muslim women who know their purpose? Because I'm thinking, feminism has had a huge impact. I'm living in the Gulf, right? And I see it here around us, right? I do understand that a lot of the times there's a lot of extremism and suppression that causes these women to move away from the religion and towards that liberalism, the shiny apple that liberalism extends to
Right.
them, and they just want to take a bite of it, right? But my question is, if we're talking on the on a general aspect, particularly because you were put on this mission, what what type of woman did you guys go after, and in what ways? What were the ways that you guys used? Or I don't want to say you guys because I know right now it's not you, but
Yeah, no,
the
no,
way
it's
that you used.
definitely not me now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But the way that what were the ways that they taught you in order to, spread this propaganda?
Well, essentially, if you take a look to the back to the times, it was pre-internet or beginning of internet, and the vast majority of the Muslim nation were looking to Egypt in terms of culture, in terms of high standards, and the high class people, and the feministas, or no, sorry, fashionistas of the time. And these would have been the actresses, these would have been the singers, these would have been the very wealthy Egyptian women, because all of it was surrounding in the Gulf. You want to watch a movie, you're going to watch an Egyptian movie. Everything was around the Egyptian society. Excuse me. So imagine in those days, you are an Egyptian actress. You are a high-class Egyptian woman, and you get invited to the ambassador's home for a dinner. Many of these women already were weak in their faith. They were either ignorant of their faith or just weak in general, and people like this, they want to hold on to something that says, oh, I can do this as a Muslim and still be a Muslim. So these are the kind of people I was targeting, because the rest of the world, or the Muslim world, the Arab speaking Muslim world, was looking to them. So if their women were doing it, then basically this is culture. This is raising yourself up a little bit. So in that time, I was supposed to get to know these women. And when I see that they have, and we'll call it a disease of the heart, a weakness in their faith, I was supposed to work with that. For instance, you have a woman and she's wearing hijab, but you can see that the hijab is, it's not fully there. She's trying to play with it a little bit. So I could go to that lady and I'll say to her, you know, I love this. It's a hijab. Is it called a hijab? I love this hijab of yours. The color is very beautiful. Why do you wear it? So I come in with like ignorance, and she will probably answer me to the best of her ability. It's our cultural thing. It's, in the Quran, we're supposed to do it with whatever she has of knowledge. She will say it to me, but she will also have a shyness, because I can already see in her that she's not thrilled that she's wearing this. And she may not even understand why she's wearing this. So I'll be like, I was reading the Quran. It was something that they said that we should do. So we learned the culture. And I noticed in the Quran, it says that the women are supposed to take, is it khimar, that the scarf thing, and put it over their breast. Now you see how I'm doing this. I'm making it appear that I'm interested. Please help me a little bit in understanding the words and the terminology. And it said, bring it over your breast. So wouldn't wearing a shawl be the same thing without having to cover your hair? Because in the Quran, it says to cover your breast, not your head. So if there's a weakness in her faith, if she doesn't have knowledge, I put a seed in her mind that, oh, maybe if I start wearing scarves around my shoulder and I cover my breast with my scarf, or, I use like a shawl or something, I'm doing what Allah said. He didn't say cover your head. And subhanAllah, I've seen people give me nowadays the same argument that Allah doesn't say cover your head, that it's just a shawl that you're supposed to wear, that you're just to make sure that your breast is covered. You don't wear something low cut. That's it. So this is exactly what they were looking for, to make sure that the people who didn't have knowledge, who had some kind of weakness, that I would work on that, but work on it in such a way that I'm not directly attacking them. I'm almost like trying to help them.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. That makes me think a lot about the ways in which they do things. I mean, we as Muslims, I think we always have the idea of direct confrontation, right? And I think a lot of Muslims have been deceived, especially when we look at the American parties and the politicians. A lot of them, they come, they might put in a good word about Islam here or there and stuff like that, and Muslims fall for it, right? I feel like maybe it's because we don't have that aspect of deception, but the ways in which the West get to us is
Right.
very much that, that deception, subhanallah.
Let me
Now,
add something here. There is a lot of subliminal messaging that is going on even in the Muslim world. And I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was watching an ad for a Middle Eastern airline. And as I'm watching it, what I see is the camera pans through the first class, business class, the economy class. As it's going through, in first class, all the women are very smartly dressed, not a hijab in first class. Business class, you might see one woman in there, and she's wearing what I will call a modern hijab. Get to the economy class, you see a few more hijabs, maybe one niqab, but the niqab is an old woman. So it's giving you the idea that the high class people, they don't cover like that. The little bit lesser high class, you might see one or two, but they're very modern in the way that they do it. The only one wearing the niqab, the only one wearing proper hijab are very poor, and old woman who's probably just culturally she wears it because her parents made her do it 50 years ago. So you get that subliminal message through this ad, and there's a lot of ads like this. If you pay attention on the TV and the social media, etc., you'll notice that this is the way it is. Your subliminal mind gives you the idea, oh, this is some old Bedouin woman whose tribe forces her to do it or something. So if you keep seeing ads like this, if you keep seeing social media like this, what's going to happen is your brain is going to hold on to the idea that upper class, highly cultured, educated women don't wear hijab. Only the poor wear hijab. Only the old fashioned, very old women wear a niqab. This is not something normal. It's not something that educated people do. And subhanallah, in Kuwait once, I saw this in action. I was at there's an eye hospital in Kuwait, for problems with your eyes. And I was waiting in line for a medicine for my eyes and in the pharmacy. And this very modern woman walks up in front of me. She sees the line. She walks in front of me. I'm next in line. And she goes up to the pharmacist and said, "This Bedouin woman has the all day long," in English. She said, "This Bedouin woman has all day long. Let me get my medicine. I have to get back to work." And I'm not a person who can just stay quiet. So I look at her and say, "Pardon me, but this Bedouin woman has to get back to the university where she's a professor. So please get to the back of the line."
Show her.
And she,
Yes.
yes, but that's the image. She saw
Yeah.
me, and in that day I was in all black. She saw me wearing this black outfit, and it's like Bedouin, uneducated, straight out of the desert, which doesn't really even exist anymore. Many of these Bedouin women still wearing niqab, still believing in Allah and trying to be good. Other women who are religious and putting on the niqab and putting on the hijab and trying to be religious and good are extremely educated, doctors, engineers, but the image
Absolutely.
is there.
Absolutely.
The image is there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think films in particular, I think subhanAllah, the Muslim Ummah has underestimated the way films has damaged us. Even if we look earlier on with pre the fall of the Khilafah, right? What the West did was they would come into particularly three places. It was Egypt, Beirut, Turkey. And they would create these small educational circles where they'd bring in the youth. That's how how they started with the Young Turks. But if we saw the way in which those people operated, it was not as successful as to what we have today, right? And I feel that the reason why today things have, it's escalated to such an extent, particularly since the 1960s, was because of the film, right? And we know why. And Egypt is one of the hubs of the Kabbalah, of Freemasonry. They put a lot of effort in Egypt, right? It was one of the gateways in which they came into the Ummah, subhanallah. Now, what the Ummah one of the things I think that they did that was so pernicious was they set out a group of Orthodox scholars in the 1990s, 1970s, 1980s to say and to preach that photography, film, these type of things is haram. They actually preached that this was haram and that people now, I understand and I completely agree with warning people from staying away from these things. right? Because of course it's full of facade. But
Right.
when they came and they said for us Muslims ourselves, that it's haram for us to make films or to get into that sector, what they were doing, the reason why they propagated this message was because they didn't want us to ever brand ourselves. They will always do the branding for us, right? I'm not sure
Yes.
if you saw, there's a new film. I'm not even sure what its name is about, but it's about, I'm sure you probably saw it, about a band of singers and there's hijabis in it, very famous in the United States, right?
Okay.
And it gained so much traction, and so many Muslims, particularly Western Muslims, were like, "Oh my gosh, it's so nice to see, a hijabi." And she doesn't take off her hijab like in other films, but her etiquette, her mannerisms, the things she speaks about. I mean, they sing about obscene things, they swear. It's everything that goes against us. But why did so many Muslim women go after? Why did they love it so much? Because they saw that representation of them. But they told us that it was wrong. Until today, anytime somebody says, I want to be a filmmaker or something like that, I live here in the Gulf, right?
Right.
They will say, no, 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 it's haram, it's haram. Like, don't do those type of stuff. Like, don't go into music, don't go into film, don't go into, I mean, how many times did we have nasheed singers who were completely ostracized by the community, even though they were singing nasheeds, right?
Right.
And they were told that this is wrong. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Because they wanted the only representation, the only programming funnel to be the Western representation, what the West, because I mean, we can do Dawa in the Orthodox manner.
Yes.
But think about the programming that this a child has to grow up. Go to school is Western education. They come home, social media, Western programming. They read books by Western authors. They watch films by Western filmmakers. They read books by Western writers. Everything that they are consuming, 90% of whatever they're consuming, they go outside. I mean, here I live in the Gulf. You go into a shop, there's music, Western music.
Yes.
Everything that this person is consuming is Western. And then you have the 5% of motivational videos they find, Islamic motivational videos they find on YouTube. You know, for us
Yeah.
as Muslims, we need to really start getting our head into the idea that if we want to take back our kids, if we want to guide our people, we have to infiltrate all the programming spheres.
Then add to this something that I came across when I was living in Kuwait is I had a lot of friends that they were into things they shouldn't be into. They listened to music. They were on the listening to the radio all the time, watching things on TV. And because of them, because I wasn't doing it, I'm not listening to the radio, to the music and so forth, but they would contact me and say, "Hey, this radio station just played such and such and such and such." And it's a government station, and they just put on something that is absolutely disgusting. And I would know it from them. And then I started thinking about that. It's like, we're not listening to this. We're not seeing what's on these shows. There isn't anybody who is watching over it to make sure that something isn't slipping in little by little. So this always kind of scared me in as well, because okay, haram to listen to the music. I agree. It's haram to listen to the music. Now, the radio stations are playing the music. It's on all over the place. And, I walk into shops during December and I'm listening to, what is it? Joy to the world, the Lord is born in a Muslim country, because nobody knows what it is. To the extent that even in some of these countries, you were told, learning English, there's no need to learn, don't learn English. English is a bad language. It's a language of the kuffar. Only learn Arabic, and many people didn't speak English. So all this stuff happening around them, happening in English, the kids are picking it up, but they have no clue.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it is
absolutely.
everywhere. And then even you go back in history, especially to Egypt, the colonizers came in and they see that the women are actually educated, are actually working in the society and doing good things in society. And they literally said, we have to get the women out of these places. We have to stop their education. We have to stop them from knowing what's going on, because how can you control? Knowledge is the key. I always, subhanAllah, whenever I give a lecture, one of the things, everybody asks me, what should we do? Read. Ikra. Read, read, read. Learn, understand. Not just Quran and Hadith, which is very important. Understand your deen, but also understand how everything in this world supports your deen, proves that your deen is correct. I have a
Yeah.
video called the rituals of human beings, and it's about hijab, and it's about how the mating ritual, Allah, every step of the way, has stopped us from leading to fornication and adultery through all the rules that we have, because it follows through the mating ritual of the human being, which Allah knew. Subhanallah.
Yeah. Subhanallah. When we focus on seeking knowledge, it's not only the knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith. Why? Because the Quran was sent to the world. It's about
Yes.
human beings. It's about human relations. It's about politics. It's about the way that the world is run. So you cannot really understand the Quran in its full. There's so much. We talk about the Quran being a timeless book. You know, it's when we look at it physically, it's very limited. It's just a couple of pages, 600 pages. That's it. How could 600 pages explain so much? the reality is the reality is that every time you learn about the world and then you come back and you read the Quran, you learn more. Who is it? I believe it was who is it? The name is out. Imam Shafi'i. Imam
Okay.
Shafi'i. He had a tafsir, right? His tafsirs, and he had a group of students who would attend his lectures. So now he was doing at one point in time Surah Al-Baqarah, and he would travel from place to place. And so his students began to realize that he did his tafsir in this year about Surah Al-Baqarah. He went next year to do it, but it was different, right? So they had to start traveling to wherever he went just to understand Surah Al-Baqarah. And they kept on traveling because every year it was different. It wasn't the same tafsir. So they asked him, Imam Shafi'i, why do you keep on changing it? Because he says, the more I learn about the world, and I'm paraphrasing, but the more I learn about the world, the more I travel, the more I deal with people. And then I come back and I read again, more things begin to reveal itself. So I have to keep on adding. And so that's
Yes.
what happened. The students of knowledge kept on traveling with him, because every
Yes.
time it kept on being added, subhanAllah. And that's the reality of the Quran. Is every
Yes.
time, the more you will not understand the Quran by itself, because the Quran was sent for the world. It's sent to explain the world. If you don't, if you don't see the world, if you don't understand the way that the world operates, you won't understand the Quran itself. And I think this brings me to a topic, um, another way in which the West really did destroy Islam. It's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's very important for us to discuss it. Now that we brought up the topic of knowledge, is the secularization of Islam. I think one of the ways in which, and this happened with colonialism, right? So once they destroyed the Khilafah in the early 1900s, they started to spread colonialism and colonial ideas. One of the things that they started to spread was the secularization of Islam in a very subtle way. They didn't say it's secularization, but they started to say that Islam is simply a religion of rituals. So when we start to think about Islam, we don't think about it as a social religion, as a political religion, as a religion that deals with economics and society and people, right? We don't wake up thinking that the Quran is, a blueprint for life. We think of it as, okay, I can go into the Quran when I feel sad, right? Which you can, of course.
Yes.
Maybe let me see what lessons I can learn from this story, or something like that. We go to it for inspiration in times of distress, right? The same thing, and then we focus on prayer and fasting, and all of these things are very important parts of Islam, but that's not where Islam stops. That's not all there is about Islam.
Right.
And so what happens is the Muslim person, right, starts to shape, and I'm going to speak particularly about women, right, because I want to go back to the topic that we were having about when woman views man as God, and then her whole life is centered around trying to become man. So what happens now is when they take away God from society. How do they do that? Right? So how do they secularize Islam? They say it's only in your house. So whatever you do inside your house, you pray, you fast, it doesn't matter. But come out and speak about Islam in the public, try to establish Islam amongst the people, that is a problem. And we know this even from the seerah, that in the beginning of the seerah, the Prophet ﷺ, had private dawah for 3 years. And Quraysh didn't do anything during this time. They all knew what was happening, but they're like, it's behind closed doors, it's fine. The time that Quraysh started to attack the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba who were with him at that time was when they started to call out for it publicly, right? Because that's when Islam begins to enforce itself in a public way, right? Now, what happens is the Muslim woman, right? Even if she wants to have a career, because some women come up to me and they tell me, oh, but Sister Waad, I feel like, I have such a passion to do this, such a passion to do that. I don't want to stay at home and just cook and clean and take care of my children. So I ask them, I tell them, why do you want to do that? What is your goal? I want to have a career. I want to be financially independent. I say, stop, stop. Did you forget that you're a Muslim? The goal of every Muslim should be that whatever I do is in the service of Islam. Whatever I do, even marriage, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have children. I'm going to raise these children for the service of Islam. Even if you want a career, right? I'm going to, I'm going to be a doctor to serve the Muslim woman, right? Because we need Muslim doctors, right? I'm going to be a teacher to increase the knowledge of the Muslim me, right? And this goes for men as well. Men don't only think about being a protector and provider, you're also Muslim. You have to, the same way you protect and you provide for your family, protect and you provide for the ummah. But just think about it now, Shariffa. If you were to ask Muslims, just in general, go out and ask Muslims, why do you do what you do? How many of them are going to tell you, I do it for Islam? How many of them genuinely sit down and think, I am going to, whatever career I want, whatever passion, whatever skills I have, that I'm going to bring it back to Islam? How many Muslims? That is the level of secularization that we have. Even Muslims who say, I'm a Muslim, but they don't realize, are you really a Muslim? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I did not create them, illa liya'budun. I did not create the jinn and the ins except to worship me. Everything that you do, especially in the time that we are in now, because when the Khilafah was there, you had the Fard Kifaya, where a certain group of people would go about with the spreading of Islam, establishing the deen. We have the Khilafah state, we have the government, but now we don't have that. Now, out of all times, is the time every single Muslim and every single Muslimah should be thinking about how I could use my strengths, my skills, my goals for the way of Islam. But if we were to ask the Muslimin, how many of them are going to say that?
Not so many. And then let me add something to that. When they went around destroying things, one of the things that they also targeted is the fact that Islam is an interconnected religion. So if you break away one piece or one part, you can affect a lot of other parts that go with it. An example, I once did a video, and in the video, I was talking about how important it is that men realize when they're getting ready to get married that their job is to take care of a woman. Don't be going looking for a woman who's going to have a good job, who's going to help you and do everything, that you're going to share everything, because that's a Western concept. That now the man is like, no, she has to be educated. She has to have a job. She has to help out with the finances. This is her job as a woman. I don't want some gold digger who's asking for money, who's sitting around and doing nothing but taking care of kids and getting fat all the time. I mean, this concept has seeped into Islam. So the woman who is supposed to be, my money is mine, it's no longer yours, because the westernization came in. And now also women are being put in, it's being put into our minds that we should be helping our husband. We should be giving him half, maybe paying half the bills, maybe doing these things, because I should contribute to the family as well. So The idea is, let's break down all those things, the rules, the regulations that are meant to protect women, put them out into that field, get them out there spending money, get them out there taking care of their family so that the man doesn't have to. Now the man's ideas are changing. She should be doing these things. How dare she have money and she's wasting her money while I'm paying for the food and I'm paying for the rent and I'm taking care of everything. And even religious Muslim men, very upset. I'm not going to give her money to go buy such and such because she wastes her own money. She could have done it with her own money. Well, that's her money.
Absolutely.
And the
Yeah.
mentality is it's so out there in the Muslim society. Why is it that the woman gets half of the amount of her brother in inheritance? Because he's supposed to be taking care of her, but he's not. We're being broken into family units. If you take a look at how it used to be in the Middle East, how it used to be in Africa, how it used to be in many places, Muslim countries, where the family stuck together. You built onto your family land, your family house. You made all your money was put in a communal money so that you took care of each other. And so the family was strong because it was the family, it was the tribe. You took care of each other. That has been slowly dismantled, like it was in the United States. The idea that I'm 18, I'm 20, I'm married, I get my own house, I get my own family, I'm independent. Well, you're independent, you no longer have power. Because now we have broken down your tribe, we have broken down your society, and you are just an individual or two people, maybe five, six people if you have a big family. But you're just your small family unit. We'll visit mom and dad on the special holidays, and that's it. They have no say in our life. We have nothing to do with them. But you take a look at the rich families, the families that have fortunes. They're living in compounds. They have one building where all the family lives. They have acres of land where everybody has a house, and all their money is combined because that's where their power is. But the rest of us, no, separate, go live your life, be individual. Don't be, don't live in the family house. That's horrible. No, have your own house. You just lost your power, your political power, your economic power, and even your background, your not background, your support for raising your kids, for living your life as a family. You lose it all by breaking it all apart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. SubhanAllah, so many things that you mentioned to unpack because one, the first thing that I'm going to start with is women today. We have it so hard and we wonder why. I mean, Blanche and Oswald, they did a study of 100,000 women in the United States and in the UK. And they found over 20 years, right, from the 1970s to the 1990s, it's probably way worse now, right? But at that time, they found that 71% of women 71% of women's well-being decreased since the advent of feminism. And we ask ourselves why. When we look, I mean, for example, postpartum depression, overwhelming. I mean, I see women, some videos of women saying, I can't clean, I can't cook, my house is a mess, my children like this. And then I moved to Sudan. I went to Sudan and I come from South Africa. So in South Africa, it's very liberal. We're probably one of the most feminist countries in the world. So I've seen liberalism at its finest. And I moved and I saw the woman struggling. And I moved to Sudan and my aunt gave birth. We had the woman from her family come over. Of course, she had us. This was in the family home. We have a family home in Sudan, which we don't see in the West. There's no family homes in the West.
Right.
We have a home where the parents, my grandmother, my grandfather passed away, but when he was alive, that's where they lived, right? It was the family home. All these women who had problems, if they had problems in their marriage, if they were giving birth, they would always come here to seek refuge, and there would always be the help of it. So my aunt gave birth, And she had no stress at all. First of all, she had 5 children. All her children were being taken care of by the sisters-in-laws, the sisters, the aunts, whatever
Yes.
ones were present, right? She didn't have to cook, she didn't have to clean. She was having the time of her life. She gave birth, no postpartum depression, no overwhelming, not none of that. And I sat down and I thought to myself, this is the village. And when
Yes.
I think about it, no woman ever had to go. I was watching a documentary on the Maasai culture, the Maasai women who live outside, in they don't live in the countrysides. And it was also one of the first things that opened my mind to how polygamy may not be such a bad thing the way that Westerners see it, right? So it's her and her co-wives. And she was like, when I was giving birth, my co-wives, they were the ones who were taking care of the children. They were taking care of the cooking and the cleaning. They were taking care of me. And I didn't have that worry, that stress. And I thought to myself, subhanAllah, having those people around you, the family around you, it takes away from us. But now it takes away the stress from us. But now in the West, you put a woman, she's married, she has kids, she has work, right? Because of the capitalism and societal ideas. She has to work, she has to take care of the kids, she has to cook, she has to clean. Of course, she's going to hate her
Exactly.
life. Of course, she's going to. And then on top of that, hormonal imbalances, depression, PMS, PCOS, you know? Let's just keep on taking these antidepressant pills. Like, look at the catastrophe that has happened to us. And after all of this, we are still led to believe, we're still being infiltrated with the ideas that I still need to be financially independent. Let me tell a woman something, because I speak to women who are anti-feminist and they tell me this. They
Right.
say, I need to be financially independent, even if, just in case. Now, I say this and I always say this. Maybe it's something in male psychology, I don't know, but I have seen this way too many times for it to be just, exceptional, for it to be just one or two cases. When a woman has money, even if the husband is the provider, if she's working, the whole idea of my money is my money inherently dissolves, because
Yes.
the man, as long as he sees you have your own money, will never be happy giving you. He may give you the basics, but come and ask him for anything above the basics, he will not give it to you. He will say, your money. What about your money? I mean, you have money, you're working. Why are you working then? You have your money, go use your money. You will never have he will never really be a true provider in that case, you
And he
know?
doesn't feel
And I
like he
feel like a
has
lot of
a
women,
task. Like
exactly, exactly,
he doesn't
subhanAllah.
have a
And
job. It's like, you're already taking care of yourself. What do you need me for? And men do have an inherent
exactly,
need to be needed, just like we as women.
to be
We have
needed.
a need to be needed.
Absolutely.
And if you take away my ability to take care of you, then I lose a part of who I am. So yeah, I totally get it. I agree with that 1,000%, not 100%. I think that it's extremely important that, my mother, who at the time, alhamdulillah, before she died, alhamdulillah, she took her shahada. But at the time, she wasn't a Muslim. And she used to tell me all the time, you have to be confident enough in your womanhood to let a man be a man. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to
Absolutely.
do it. And that was one of the,
Absolutely.
subhanallah. That was one of the things I learned from her, that now in my older age, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. Subhanallah.
I think we have been led to believe. I mean, because I feel like just in the general aspect, just think about it. If you go to a company or a project that you're working on, and everybody dismisses you like you're not needed, like we don't need you. Like, what are you doing here? Are you gonna stay? Are you gonna show up? Are you gonna put in the effort to make a change? You know, no, you're
No.
not. You're gonna turn away from that. You're gonna go away from that. It's the same exact thing in a marriage. And men, they the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them, the way that they feel needed the most is when they're providing for you.
Yes.
Because it's instinct. It's the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. But we women have been taught, one of the first ideas that we have been taught is that men and women are the same.
Women are taught that they have to be more than a man in order to be successful. They have to do everything a woman needs to do, all of the jobs that are inherently put upon the woman, and she has to be successful in a man's world. So it's not even, if it was just the same, I get up, I go to work, I come home, and I take out the trash, and I've been a good girl. Yeah, that wouldn't be so bad. But that's not
It's
what
not that.
it's not that. That's not the reality of what a woman is forced to be within the society. So I think that what you're saying is absolutely correct. Give the man the desire and the need and ability to take care of you, and he will step up to the plate.
Absolutely, absolutely, subhanallah. And I feel like a lot of women underestimate this thing. And I feel like also going forward with the way that things are, because I used to coach in femininity, and I guess I was very immature at that time because I was very new to the scene, really. And I understood one thing is a lot of women, because men have been emasculated to the maximum at the moment. The real issue that we're facing right now is actually the emasculation of men, which is why by so far do I mean, and it's a very nuanced topic, but I do believe that if we fix men, a woman will follow suit. Because what I see now is a lot of women who are saying, I want to provide, I mean, I want to stay home. I want to, take care of the kids. I don't want to work, but my husband tells me he has to work, and just looking at, you mentioned this earlier, but even looking around me in the Arab world, leave the Western
Yeah.
world. I think it's even worse in the Arab world, where we're looking at the marriage requirements for a woman all the time. She has to have a degree, she has to be working, she has to do this, she has to do that. It's actually there. The woman that come around asking, oh, we're looking for a woman for this man, and then she gives you the prerequisites. It's always there that she has to have a degree, right? So
Yes.
at the moment that we're at now, men have been programmed, they have been emasculated to such an extent, women are forced to step into it because that's how
Yes.
society has been shaped. And so I think personally for me, I think we really need to work on different ways. And I always say different ways because I don't believe that the orthodox way that we have been doing Dawa, which is just, social media, it's very powerful indeed, but I do believe that we
Yes.
have to infiltrate all the different ways, all the different programming tools, all the different, funnels of program, because we're programmable beings. We don't understand. I mean, some people will say it's a very pernicious thing for you to say that, oh, well, so you're saying we need to program our people. I'll say, yeah, because we're programmable.
Yeah,
We're
this is true.
consuming
And
information.
in many ways, the problem is it takes so long to do, and it has to be done in a way that you don't always let people know that this is what you're doing for them.
Exactly.
Because sometimes
Exactly.
they're going to fight it. They're going to fight it. They're going to fight it. And they don't even know why they're fighting it, other than this is not what I know.
This is why I'm saying that we have to infiltrate all the different funnels, because if we're coming from a direct, we have to really play the game the way the West played it. I think as Muslims, we're so afraid to go down that road, but we have to realize in the war that we're playing, if we cannot play from outside, we
Yeah,
cannot hurt them from outside. We have to get into the game. We have to start playing the game. Now, of course, we have our morality. We have our Quran. We will always stick to that. But we also have to be smart when we do things. We cannot always, be straight up about it. We have to use certain tactics, certain strategies to play the game the way that they play it and to bring back our people, because it's a very vicious game. It's a
it
very,
is.
very vicious game.
But have to recognize that the largest part of Dawa is our behavior, our character, our dealings with people. People will see before they listen. People will
Absolutely.
watch us and they will pay attention to what we're doing more than what we're saying. So we have to be a good example. It can't be that the religious people are the ones that are like haram and you're going to hell and the life is, you that, because that is not the example of the Prophet ﷺ. That is not the example of Islam. You
Absolutely.
come across somebody that is not practicing, that doesn't have knowledge of Islam. You don't make them hate Islam from your behavior and your attitude and your self-righteousness and your judgmental, behavior with them. No, you give them good character. You show them Islam in your actions, in your practice, and you will see them change on their own. And
Absolutely.
one
Absolutely.
of the programs that I've always advocated for is one that I'm trying to put it together actually here in Turkey. I would love to get a good investor, but essentially is a women's empowerment center where everyone in the center is teaching something, teaching computer science, teaching business, teaching arts and crafts, teaching something in every classroom. But the ones who are teaching are practicing, educated, knowledgeable Muslim women. So whoever comes in and learns from her, you're learning business, but you're also learning this is an educated Muslim woman. This is an example of who and what you can be and still be a Muslim and still be practicing and
Absolutely.
still be and covered. And, being that example, which they don't see. They don't see it.
Absolutely.
Few days ago, I started working doing Dawa. There's a masjid here in Turkey, and people can be trained and then go in there and talk to the tourists that come in. And, you know, this is me. So when the tourist sees me, they have that image. So I came up across these two Spanish tourists, and I speak Spanish. So I started chatting with them a little bit, and they tell me, "Oh yeah, we're studying computer science, artificial intelligence." And I was like, "Oh, I have a PhD in artificial intelligence, linguistic aspects." And they start asking me questions. By the time I'd say like 5, 10 minutes into the conversation, they're like, "You've just blown our mind. We never expected you to be able to have this conversation with us." And then from there, I dove right into, well, Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a doctor. She was a expert in the Arabic language. She was one of the greatest narrators of the hadith of the Prophet, and went into how important it is to be educated, and that women throughout the centuries were scholars. Women throughout every one of our four great schools, those scholars and other scholars throughout the centuries all had female teachers as well, but nobody talks about them. And we had a beautiful conversation about women, education, empowerment, and knowledge. So,
Absolutely. SubhanAllah.
subhanAllah, we
You see
have
that
to be the
representation?
example.
And that's an even more powerful form of da'wah
Yes,
than, I mean, I feel like they would have been more moved by that conversation that they had with you than, than a video that they might have seen on social media, subhanAllah, because this is real time connection. This is you in
yes,
real time. And we are ambassadors of Islam. Every single one of us are ambassadors of
yes.
Islam. We have to take that responsibility. We have to realize what a responsibility that is.
It's
Subhanallah,
huge. It's
subhanallah.
huge. I always tell people, how did the largest Muslim country in the world become Muslim? Not by a bunch of da'iyas or scholars coming into Indonesia, not a bunch of, people who came in there to try to force Islam on people. No, it was business people doing business in a legitimate Islamic way, that the people are asking the question, why are they so honest? Why are they being this way with us? Why aren't they cheating in the measurements? Why are they, they're asking these questions, and the answer is Islam. And when the answer is Islam, then they ask the question, well, what is Islam? Did I just lose you?
Absolutely. No, 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 I'm here, I'm here.
Okay, okay.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah, yes, that's absolutely true. And I think one of the things that we always have to keep in mind is the akhlaq that we have, the behavior that we have, the way that we carry ourselves as Muslimin in anything that we do, in any field that we go into. So even when we're talking about, all the different funnels, if we're going to write books, if we're going to make films, we're going to use the tools, their tools, right? So the films, the
Yes,
books, the music, but we're going to do it with our adab, with our akhlaq,
yes,
with our manners. We're going to show them, what the real Islam is. And it's not even going to be from a place that they expect, subhanAllah.
yeah,
And I feel like that's really what the power is. And as Muslims, because a lot of Muslim women are very confused. Should I get married? Should I have children? Should I have a career? And for me, what I've come to, and even from reading the stories of the great women in Islam, they did it all, not at the same time, but you can get married, you can have children when your children grow up, right? Or not even grow up, when they become independent. A little bit,
Yeah.
maybe 13, 14, right? By 14 years old, I was doing my own laundry, I was cleaning the house, I was making dinner. You can teach your children to become independent by a certain age, right? I have a
Right.
friend of mine, she has 6 children. I call her on a random day. She'll say, "Yeah, all my children are busy. They're one's cooking, one's cleaning, one's doing this, one's doing that." And she created a business. She sells things. She writes books. She's an author. She did two things. She gave
Right.
the ummah offspring, right? She gave the ummah
Yeah.
progeny, and then now she's giving the ummah. She's a writer, so she's giving the ummah her skills. And I feel like
Yes.
that's what I want all women to understand. You don't have to abandon one thing, because I always preach marriage. I say marriage is a beautiful thing. We should not become that feminist that thinks, no, I'm never going to get married, I'm just going to focus on my career. I'm like, society lied to you. Society told you
Yes.
it's either marriage or career, and I'm telling them you can have it all. Nobody said career is time limited, right? Your
That's right.
ambitions, your skills. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a head. He gave us intellect. If we were only
Yes.
supposed to be in the home, right? Then we would have only had the mind for the home. But we have so much talent in us, right? But does that mean that we abandon our role as wives, as mothers, even strong men, even our men? We know the saying that behind every strong man is a strong woman, right?
Yes.
I say behind every strong man is a nurturing woman. Because when he has the problems of the world in his shoulder, he wants to come home and forget about those problems, right? And that's where you come in. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he was in a time of great distress, when he would receive the revelation, and it was something so shocking, so overwhelming, who did he run to for comfort? It was Khadija radiallahu anha. And she
Yes.
comforted him, right? And he said she believed in me when nobody else believed in him, right? So even us as Muslims, I mean, we talk about, oh, I can't do jihad, or I can't be, in certain political states, but you are in that when you support our men to get to that level, right? When we are the backbone of our men, we're the backbone of our children, right? That's why we as
When
Muslims,
we
as
raise the
mothers.
sons that can do that, when we raise the daughters that can
Exactly.
be that. And
Exactly.
not only that, we have to also think in terms of, okay, like when my son was going to get married, he said to his wife, look, I want my wife, when you have children, I want you at home until your children go to school. Then you can do anything you want while they're in school. He's like, if you want to wait 2, 3, 4 years, you want to finish university, you want to work, you want to do whatever, do that. Then we'll start having children till the children are in school. Then do as you wanted there. But those first 5, 6 years are imperative. That is like the building
Absolutely.
base for the child's, for his personality, for his emotional, his religious, for all of this. Is the base is built between 0 and 5, believe it or not. So, and
Absolutely.
when he
Absolutely.
got married, this is what he got. Actually, he got one. She's like, I don't want to go to work, you take care of me. And I made sure that he knew that's your
Subhanallah,
job.
most women in our fitra, we don't want to work. That's the reality
Yeah.
of it. Most women don't really want to work. I think a lot of that comes from the baggage of the trauma of having being let down by men in their lives, which once
Yeah.
again goes back to the whole thing of we need to fix men. If men
Well, even
continue
even
down
with
the path.
ourselves, it's very important that we do have education. I will say that if you feel that there might be something in the future, if you feel you need something, and I think most of us do, then fine, get your education as long as you can do so without ending up in haram. Get your education, get that little piece of paper. If you need it, it's there. You have the ability to take care of your family. You have the ability to take care of yourself. But it doesn't mean that you have to go out there and do everything. Take your time, take a stage of life. I am a daughter. I am a student. I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a worker, whatever it is. You have stages in life. I retired. When I retired, during all these years, since I started, learning Islam and getting my degrees in Islamic studies, during all this time, I was also working to be able to support my children. And while I'm working and supporting my family, I am still making dawah as well. I was teaching, I was writing, I was doing what I could in between, but making sure that my family was number one. Once my children, that's it. My son got married. The other one's about to finish university. I retired and I said, I'm done. You guys are taken care of financially. You guys are men now. You can take care of yourselves. I'm done with this. So I left the university job. Now what am I doing? I said the rest of my life is for Allah. I'm going to be doing dawah. That's what I'm giving my life to now. So subhanallah, we have so many stages in our life as a woman and chances to do something different than what we were doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even last year. So as long as we know in front of Allah, I'm responsible for A, B, and C. I take care of A, B, and C. I take care of my salah. I take care of myself and my character and my religious duties in terms of Allah. I take care of, if I'm married, I take care of my family. If I have children, I take care of my children. I do what I need to do. If there's extra time, then for the sake of Allah, as you said at the beginning, I find something that I can do that will fulfill me as well, that will add to who I am as a woman, as a human being. But again, for the sake of Allah, not just to go out
Absolutely.
there and make money. Maybe I'm
And
gonna
that
make
is
a
the
lot of money in
epitome.
the process, but how is this helping the
That
ummah?
absolutely. That is the message that should be etched in every single Muslim's mind, in every single
Yes,
Muslim's mind, even the men. For every Muslim, whatever you want to do in your life, right? Whether it's a hobby, a career, marriage, whatever it is, it should always be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I always tell women, they come to me, they say, must I give away my skills for marriage? I say, no. Get married, have children, raise those children to be soldiers of Allah, use your skills. You can do it all. Allah, we're such flexible human beings. We have a
yes.
mind, it's incredible, right? And we have a whole life ahead of us, subhanAllah. But in the end, we should desecularize ourselves. We should understand that our whole life's goal is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That
Yes.
even the skills that we have, the passions that we have, all of that should be used in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. When I was teaching, I was teaching like Islamic studies for teaching, doing dawah and teaching like Quran and Hadith and these things at USC in California. And while I was doing this, one of my students, who's now a very, very good friend, her brother was very upset. And I sat and I talked to him. And when I was talking to him, his father was insisting that he do something in the medical field. And I was like, well, he's like, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be an administrator. I don't want to deal with this stuff. I said, look, you want to work for the sake of Allah, right? You want your life to be devoted to Allah. Go ahead and get the degree that makes your father happy, but make it for the sake of Allah. And subhanallah, he was the hospital administrator. Remember when the tsunami hit Indonesia? He was the hospital administrator that was helping out and setting up the hospitals to take care of the Muslims. So he did his degree, he graduated and got a job in an Islamic medical facility that sets up for emergencies for Muslim countries. So, Alhamdulillah, he got to continue in a way that was beneficial to the Muslim Ummah. He made his father happy, and he's happy with what he's doing now, alhamdulillah. He's fulfilled because he's doing it for the sake of Allah.
Absolutely. And that's something that all of us should understand, because even people who get into careers and it's for themselves, what happens? After a few years, it gets boring. Life gets boring. They're not satisfied. But what happens when you do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's continuous satisfaction, right? Even
Yes.
marriage. We go into marriage with high expectations. When you're marrying for yourself, and it was Dr. Haifa Yusuf, who was the first person who actually made me open my eyes to this. She said, she said, everything you do should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even marriage. And I sat down and I thought to myself, how? Like marriage is for yourself, right? I mean, it's to satisfy yourself. And she was like, no, everything you do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because what love dries out, right? What
Yeah.
happens when, when things get tough? What keeps you going? What really keeps you going is that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If both you and your spouse have that connected love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that love between you two also grows. It also stays for long, you know. SubhanAllah, it's one of the great things, the ni'mas of Allah, is that everything you do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's gonna come back to you.
Oh, this is very true. This is very true. And if you're doing it for Allah, especially, I always tell women, it's like you're not marrying that this man is a piece of flesh. He's a, it's meat. It's a human being. It's nothing. I said he's not perfect. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to do things wrong. But are you both trying to reach Allah? Are you both working to go towards Allah? If you want to have a good marriage, then you have to try to be on the same page. Now, let's say he's no longer on that same page. Now you make your decisions. Can I be a better Muslim inside of marriage or outside of marriage? Where am I going to be a better Muslim? Where is it easier for me to worship Allah? If it's inside marriage and it's with somebody that I'm not thrilled with still, but it's going to keep me a better Muslim in front of Allah because I'm staying with this person even when I'm not happy with him as a human being, Allah will fix the way. And Allah does it so many times, subhanallah. So you have to make decisions for the sake of Allah and only for the sake of Allah. And
Absolutely.
Allah opens the door and Allah makes a way one way or the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is an excellent way for us um, to bring this lovely conversation to an end. But inshallah, I would love to have you on for more podcasts because your wisdom is just absolutely amazing. And I'm sure so many people need to know about you and your story and the knowledge that you have gotten from it. And I feel that passion and zeal that you have for bringing a change, especially for us Muslim women, that's what we need, and we
Alhamdulillah.
need to work together.
Alhamdulillah.
We need to stick together, subhanallah. But it's been a lovely, lovely, lovely conversation.